Devin here. I was thinking I'd do some solo play and basically just play test out some rough rules that I was just thinking and toying around with for a Napoleonic type war game. Actually, to be specific, I kind of wanted to fiddle around and make a scenario or a game rule set that was a bit like the Crimean War, of course, the famous Battle of Balaclava, and probably the even more infamous Charge of the Light Brigade. Obviously, the history of the actual conflict is really complicated, big and important, and obviously people like the Ottoman soldiers get the short shrift in that bit of history. But I actually, for this game, for this fictional play thing, do want to ape on specifically the Charge of the Light Brigade, the feel of that Into the Jaws of Death, somebody blundered type thing. So the way this game works is basically you're at the command of a well-drilled regiment, and when you send the orders to them, they will do precisely what you say. Pretty minimal movement measurement, pretty minimal dice rolling. Essentially, depending on how strong your unit is how many casualties they will inflict, absolutely. The only issue is, will your orders get through? That's the challenge. So basically, I'm playing with a pretty standard deck of cards, or specifically 2 suits of a deck of cards. And what you do on a nice piece of paper off to the side is you allocate one of a number of set orders to 5 cards for here. But yeah, 5 cards per round. So it could be advance and hold an objective. It could be to hold a defensive position. It could be straight up to advance and attack a specific unit type. It has to be cavalry, infantry, and artillery. Then the other player, or in this case myself, because I'm solo playing this, they do the same thing on their set of cards. They put it all into sort of the draw deck and they give it a shuffle. Once it's all shuffled up, we then actually get, after orders have been issued, we get to a play stage where we flip up a card and we see which orders are issued in what order. So, you may have a plan to operate a well-oiled, cunning plan that has a certain order of operations, but that might not happen. The order of events may come out a little bit differently. And of course, your opponent may actually get to act before or after certain things that you want to get done. That's the idea. That's the basic idea. I'm still playing around with what the specific orders are and how like artillery works. I'm still trying to figure out artillery, how I can replicate that idea that they can have a defensive position where if you go charging in, you're in trouble. So yeah, playing around with these sort of ideas. With each round, you draw less and less cards from this deck. The idea is over time, the communication lines are getting stretched and disorganized, and so you may eventually a unit may receive an order from 2 rounds ago, 2 rounds too late potentially, but that unit must in some way follow that order. So if they get an order to advance and fire on an infantry unit and they can see one, even if it's in a inconvenient position, they must go and attack that infantry unit. There's not reason why, theirs is just but to do and die. So that's the idea. Again, I haven't thought it all through yet, so I'll just play the game and see what I discover as I go. And yeah, let's see how it plays out. So here is the battlefield. Pretty open plain with some hills and forest to break line of sight. Remember, line of sight is important in this game. If you cannot see your opponent, you cannot attack them. The red team is deployed in a big long line around the edge of this round table. And the white team is making their way up through this central road in more sort of, marching formations, heading up to their objective. And their objective is this hill over to their right and left. The idea is they're trying to get to the top of the hill. If they can stay up there for 2 full rounds unopposed, then they can place a cannon battery at the top of the hill. Well, the orders were planned, and in the end it was the white who were able to get out first, with I think that's the 2nd Regiment coming up and immediately taking the hill and holding a defensive position. The next order to come out was for the cavalry to attack the infantry. However, as you can see, the only infantry that this cavalry can see
enemy they could see is the enemy cavalry, so they stayed put. To compensate for this, a second infantry unit of the white got to the top of the hill, and not too soon either, as the first red cavalry was able to charge up the hill and challenge the forces. Both battalions, white battalions, were able, because they were in counter position, to fend off the reds with a heavy volley of fire. The red cavalry was not isolated for long, as the infantry made their way forward and held a counter position as the objective was already taken. This meant that the cavalry had at least some support. It was at this point that the white cavalry received an order to attack the red cavalry, but this left them woefully exposed as they had to cross the line in order to attack the cavalry, meaning that the red infantry unit received a free fire on their enemy. Nonetheless, the cavalry did its job. As it was in stronger numbers than the red cavalry, they were able to force them off their position and send them into a retreat. Final order of this first round saw the final red infantry unit moving up to also contest the hill. The end of the first round saw the objective thoroughly contested by both sides, and ultimately the cavalry were the ones who were taking the biggest beating, but also doing the most action. After a new round of orders being issued, the infantry unit were then able to engage against the white cavalry, giving deathly blows directly to them. Red further managed to rally, with the cavalry wheeling back and coming in and hitting the white 1st Brigade real hard. Or at least as hard as it could, inflicting only 1 casualty in this combat. Immediately the white forces responded in kind, hitting red hard with their own cavalry, but once again only managing to deliver 1 casualty. It really was a battle of sabres, with the red cavalry once again delivering a 2nd casualty to the infantry unit on the hill. The second round came to a close with a volley from the red centre, and that's how things stood, particularly with one final white infantry unit still yet to engage in this overall combat. It was at this point that somebody blundered, with the red infantry being ordered to attack the cavalry, which forced it to cross the battle line, giving the second white infantry a free fire upon it. The red infantry would suffer 3 casualties for this. Meanwhile, the white cavalry continued to lay into the red's infantry units, giving them a 2nd casualty marker on the 2nd battalion. But this was nothing compared to the red once again up on the hill, forcing the whites to be unable to hold it and place their artillery on the top. And then it was finally the whites' opportunity to box in the reds, with the white infantry finally advancing up the road and causing the red to be stuck in a bit of a kill box. This kill box would have to function without the white cavalry, as they were forced to break due to the way that the cards were played out. I might explain break tests another time. But in the end, the white cavalry had to retreat halfway back off the board. They would be able to engage again if they received a direct order. But soon it was the red cavalry who was sustaining more damage. It looked like they too may be breaking any moment now. The 2nd infantry then advanced into melee with the red cavalry, forcing them to withdraw, though not yet retreat. It looked like the momentum was swinging into the white army's favour. And just like that, the final order of the game was issued. The white army was able to advance and take the entirety of the hill. With no more orders to be issued, it looked like the hill would be in possession of the whites, even though they were unable to deploy their battery and use that to its full lethal effect. I suppose in my own imagination, as night fell on this battle, the white army was able to set up its battery on the hill, leaving red, the survivors of red, to retreat in order to not come under the fire of the cannons in the next morning. It was a close victory to the green and white army.
So there you go. In the end, the white team won. These armies, I've just painted them up red and blue. They're not no one in particular. But yes, the white army was victorious, taking the hill. As you can see, as the game went on, it all went pretty quickly. It never got to any point where the artillery could actually be set up, so I still got to think through how I'm going to make those artillery units work. But of course, the cavalry was the big player in this specific game. They were dashing around the place, causing all sorts of mischief and copying all sorts of flak. In fact, only one cavalry unit broke in that entire game. But yes, I got to think about these rules with the cavalry though, because ultimately the infantry could be just as maneuverable as the cavalry are, considering there's no real measuring in this. So I think maybe just in the attacks, like in the melees or in the firing, they can make use of their maneuverability. Like, I don't know, like if an infantry unit does try to melee them, they are able to move out of range rather than taking casualties or something like that. So they're just a bit more fluid in combat, because ultimately everyone on the board is able to go skyrocketing around, which I kind of like. I know some people wouldn't be too keen on that. They want to see that the maneuverability of the horse cavalry is greater than infantry units, but I think for a game, again, this is a game, I think it kind of works for me. So yeah, maybe just in the attacks and melee, they're able to be more maneuverable than infantry, or something like that. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and hopefully you'll see me again in the future. I might show this game again, polish it up a bit more, and who knows, maybe one day put it on Wargamevault or something. Alright, fare thee well.